happened? What's the first part? Why'd you end it? What's going on? What's up, guys? Your boy Ron Echo Taylor. Thank you guys for checking out this. You're probably wondering, why'd you fucking end the first part? Why are we here? Why is there another part? What are all these answers? I'm dying inside. Amen. Basically, I did a part two of the interview with Comic Book Universe where he uses public domain superheroes plus a little bit of his originality, and he made his whole universe. It's awesome. I love comic books, even though I'm not a nerd guy like that, and I'm not open to it much. I still love comic books, don't we all? And I think it's really cool to see all this stuff come out in the open. I've never had, although I love them, I guess all the new guys have been really nice. For anybody previously listening to Tiger Girl Bar podcast who have been guests, I've been fans of you, but this guy was really cool. I love his comics. He seems really nice, and yeah, but I'm probably coming off as a dick right now. I don't want to be rude, so please, please check out the first part, and I'm gonna let you go. But thank you guys for checking out, and welcome to the Tiger Bar podcast. Hit it, sunshine. I was wondering, like your YouTube channel, I saw there was all these like short films and like all these like 1940s style things, and I imagine you didn't make them. Like, were they already there? Like, what was that?
The serials that are on my YouTube channel, it's basically I upload public domain serials. So again, in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, if you created something, whether it was a book or a song, whatever it was, if you wanted to keep the copyright in those days, if you wanted to maintain the copyright so other people couldn't use it, you had to renew that copyright after 28 years. So if you created in 1940, in 1968, you had to go to the office and sign a form and put in a thing that said, I'm renewing my copyright for however long. And if you did that, then you keep the copyright for the 95-year period that the US has put in place. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't do that, if you didn't do all those things, that movie, book, song, whatever, would fall into the public domain. And it was not automatic that you got to keep your copyright in those days. So a lot of these serials that I was talking about earlier that were made with these 20-minute installments in a 12-episode story or a 15-episode story, a lot of them were cheaply made. They were made for the studios to use as tax write-offs so that they could do some funny tax accounting stuff. And when it came time to renew, they didn't care. They didn't care because they weren't doing anything with them. And nobody wanted them. Nobody was interested in reusing them. So a lot of them just fell into public domain. In some cases, they did renew them, but they don't police them. They don't actually mind if people put them up on YouTube. So they allow them. So on my channel, there's a mix. There's a lot of stuff like this, like you and I talking with myself and other authors. There's some stuff that I've created, some book trailers and some things that I've had professionals create for me. And at the moment, there are about 30 serials complete from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s that have a relation to what I'm doing. So things like the Phantom, who is a hero from the 1940s that they made a serial of. There was the ones that I mentioned, Mysterious Dr. Satan, the Spider Returns, Captain Midnight, even Captain Marvel. All of those have been uploaded to my channel, and I'm uploading a new one every week. I still have 25 of them to go that are on my list to do. They include things like Dick Tracy, Zorro. There's more coming. I tried to upload the 2 Superman serials from that era, and Warner Brothers shut me down. Warner Brothers said, nope, those are under copyright. We're not letting you do it. So YouTube said, no, you can't do that. Interestingly, they didn't have a problem with the 2 Batman serials from the same era. They went up, no sweat. So there's some strange stuff that happens there, but yeah, go to my YouTube channel. There's lots to watch, and they're really fun. They're a different kind of storytelling than you might be used to if you're used to Marvel movies and DC Comics movies from today, but they're where all that stuff came from.
Something I thought was kind of funny is like when you were telling me like you were adding on like I was a musician, I was like I was a telecom installation. Sorry, speech installation repair guy, owned a bookstore. When you were mentioning that, I kind of thought it was funny because like that sounded something maybe like an undercover Superman when he has his glasses and he's just Clark Kent.
Oh, I so wish. What it really boils down to is I get bored easily. I've done a lot of different things. Like I said, I've been a musician. I spent 10 years, basically the 90s, singing for my supper, quite literally. I spent the early part of the 2000s, I was installing telephones and internet in people's houses. In between there, I owned a bookstore for a short time. Didn't do very well with that. I'm not a very good businessman, so that failed miserably. I like to try things. I like to try things that I haven't done before. I always say that I basically once a decade I do something insane. So the first thing was I joined a band. I literally flew thousands of miles to join a band I'd never met. The next one is I opened a bookstore with no knowledge of how to do it and failed terribly, and that's okay. That's fine. And then now I'm trying to be a writer. I'm trying to make a living as a writer, and it's a bit crazy, but it's a lot of fun.
What do you think the next hyperfixation is going to be?
I would love to say that when this takes off and I'm making real money doing this, and that's the plan, quite honestly, when this takes off and I've actually got, the money to do so, I want to get into making cartoons. I desperately want to get into making cartoons. This is Spy Smasher. Spy Smasher is a character from, again, the 1940s, same company that created Captain Marvel. Spy Smasher is one of the ones that I love. He's like a sort of a James Bond meets Batman type character. He's right in between there. I've recast him.
Oh, I was just saying I could get into that the way you explained it.
I think he's fantastic. I actually have recast him a little bit. My version of Spy Smasher, I write about him after World War II, and he's hunting Nazi war criminals, and he's trying to bring those people to justice. But a lot of them are employed by the American government in the space program and in high tech in the scientific side of things, in something called Operation Paperclip, which was a real thing in the 1940s. And he's basically ideologically opposed to that. He doesn't like that because he fought these people in World War II and he wants to bring them to justice. So there's kind of the conflict of the superhero that the American government created is now fighting against exactly what they're trying to accomplish. So I think that's lots of fun storytelling. And it makes, to my mind, it makes for very good visuals. I think Spy Smasher as an animated show would be phenomenal. And if I can find the money, if I can find the support, I'm there. I'm going to make it.
Do you want to make it like a Cartoon Network thing or like a YouTube thing if you had the idea?
I would say, honestly, I don't have, because I don't have the money, it's kind of a wish fulfillment thing at best at the moment, either way.
Because I feel like people should know what cartoons are these days. Like, it's kind of, I know that like people do still, but like people are kind of losing the idea to YouTube,
I would like it to be if I had my wish, if somebody would grant me my wish and say, here's an unlimited amount of money, I would hire Bruce Timm, who did the 1990s Batman cartoon, Batman the Animated Series. I would hire him to do Spy Smasher in that same kind of Art Deco animated style with the square jaws and the really dramatic lighting and that sort of thing. I think it would be amazing. That said, to get that sort of comic cartoon made today, I think would be very expensive and very hard to do. But would I compromise and do it in a shorter form, cheaper to get it out there? 100%. I'm absolutely, if I can find a way to do it that I would get 10-minute shorts on YouTube and people would watch them and support them and enjoy them and maybe eventually buy them, I would absolutely do that. 100%.
I want to talk about the music a little bit later, but like, why a bookstore?
Why a bookstore? I bought a house in a small town about 70 miles from my job. So every day I was driving an hour back and forth every day, and I was working 6 days a week. I hated the job to begin with. I didn't enjoy the job, but it was paying the bills. But that commute, after about 2 years of doing that commute 6 days a week, got to the point where it was affecting my mental health. It was affecting my physical health. And finally, one day I just had enough. And I just said, nope, that's it. And literally that day started planning to open a bookstore, simply because as a kid, when I was about your age, when I was about 18, 19 years old, I worked at a used bookstore for a couple of years part-time. So I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I thought I knew, because I had this part-time job 20 years ago. I thought I could, yeah, I can do that. Sure. And so I literally rented a place in town, and in 6 weeks I had my bookstore open. And I ran it for about 2 years, ran it to the point where I failed miserably financially. It was a disaster, but it got me out of the job that I hated, and it got me living more in the small town that I live in now, and being part of that small town much more than when I was commuting. So not a bad thing. Sometimes failure is a stepping stone to success, and it's worth doing. There's nothing wrong with trying something and failing.
Yeah, no, totally. What was the price of it? Like, I assume it was semi cheap.
It was actually relatively financially not a huge problem. I can't remember what I paid for the rent on the store that I rented, but it seemed relatively, within reason. Turns out it wasn't, because I wasn't selling enough books, but there wasn't a lot of setup cost for what I was doing, unlike a lot of retail where you have to have, you have to spend thousands of dollars on stock, and you have to have fancy fixtures, and the lighting has to be good, and you need, advertise. It was a used bookstore. I needed old books, and old books were in the early 2000s. I was able to get masses of old books on eBay, and have them shipped to me at a relatively inexpensive rate. I started it on a shoestring. And again, like I said, I didn't do well with it, but it was a good way to get out of the job that I hated. And 2 years later, I ended up becoming a telecom repair guy. But the books, I would have loved to keep doing the bookstore, but it wouldn't pay the bills. It just couldn't pay the bills.
Kind of like the saying, "An enemy of your enemy is your friend."
And it was, I mean, getting away from that job that I hated really was the main reason. So doing that, that really accomplished the goal. The fact that the store itself wasn't successful, well, life, I now know that I'm not a great businessman. So when it comes to what I'm doing now with the writing, this is part of why I've approached it a different way. I know the things that I did wrong when I failed with the bookstore. I know the things that are weaknesses of my own in terms of what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. So I know that sometimes I have to step back and say, you know what, I got to pay somebody to do X, Y, Z, because I'm not good at it, and I'm not gonna do it well. Everything's a learning curve, man. You gotta try it to do it.
Obviously, you were a kid. You kind of already it was nothing more than that. But what do you think it kind of went with comics as well, or like was it just because, hey, I wanted out of the job?
No, the bookstore. At the time, the bookstore was unrelated to anything else. I mean, it was literally, I'm going to sell books for a living. It wasn't my books. It wasn't things that I was writing. It was just used books, and I'm going to sell used books to make a living. But it turns out that because the store wasn't a success, I had a lot of free time on my hands because it was quiet and it wasn't enough foot traffic, and that's why it failed. But as a result, I had the time to write. I had the time to paint. I had the time to do things in the store like that. I built custom chess sets while I was there out of gaming miniatures. I wrote a book. Actually, I wrote 2 books while I was there. It was actually, I can't say it was a gateway to more creative stuff exactly, but looking back on it, it was it kind of cracked that door open a little bit, because it told me I need to do this creative stuff on the side more, because it makes me happy.
Let's talk. I want to talk about your music. I've had like dozens of people on, and like who are musicians. Not dozens.
Okay.
That's giving me a big head. But like I've had a couple of musicians on. Most of them, like half them I know, half the people I just met off Reddit and jazz like that. But like, why did you get into music? I've slightly gotten into it myself, and it can be kind of entertaining if you have like not a reason, just like if you like it to an extent.
I actually was a little bit older than you. I was probably in my early 20s. I didn't really ever do anything music wise. In public school, I think I played the trumpet for a year, and in very, very early on, I think I sang in the choir, but that was about it. But then when I got to be, and in Canada, drinking age is 19. So when I started to be legal to go into bars, in those days when I was 19, the big thing in the bars was karaoke. It was new. It was a very new thing. It wasn't everywhere like it is today, where you can find a karaoke bar in every corner. It was brand new. We only had a few places that it was happening. And one night, 19 years old, drinking, there was karaoke, and we were at this bar, and so okay, I'll try that. Tried it once and was hooked completely. I loved it. I was terrible. I was absolutely terrible, but I loved it. I loved. It turns out I loved performing. I liked being in front of people, and I liked singing. So within about a year, I was quite heavily doing nothing but going to karaoke bars with a group of friends. We would, every time we went out, that's what we would do. And shortly after that, somebody approached me and said, we'd like you to front our band. And it was out of the blue, and I was very flattered. And we were terrible. Oh my goodness. I look back and we were awful. But it gave me the bug. And from that one, being approached by that local small band, we did 2 gigs, and they were awful. But I learned, and like as I said with the bookstore, I learned, and I got better, and I got better. Eventually, another few months down the road, somebody else came to me and said, "I've got this band, and I'm living in a city in Ontario, and this band is in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories right now, touring all over Western Canada, and they're saying their lead singer just quit, and he up and left, and they need and I want to hire you," out of the blue. Just me sitting in a bar drinking with my friends and having a good time. And about I'm going to say 2 weeks later, I was on a plane, and I just dropped everything and said, "Ah, the heck with it, I'm going to go try this." I was young enough that I didn't have anything. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any of that stuff. So there was nothing really to lose. And so I went. I just bought a plane ticket, flew off, joined, and I was with that band for about 3 years, sang with them. And again, when I started, I was awful. I saw a video years later, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I was so bad. But I learned, and I learned on the fly, and eventually joined another band. They poached me from the first band and said, "We want you to come and work with us." And then eventually, the last thing I did was the last 3 or 4 years, I was running my own bands, and I ran a couple of bands, lived in the Middle East for a little while, doing a house band gig for a hotel in Dubai. And yeah, I did that for basically all of my 20s, was singing for my supper, and it was a blast. Came out of it at 30 without a dime. I had nothing, absolutely nothing at the end of it all. I didn't own a thing. And so be it. It was fun.
Before you go, I have this saying where you get 15 seconds to share out whatever you want, whatever comes to your head, and go.
I publish a book a month. So if you're interested, folks, pdsh.ca. That's my website. It's publicdomainsuperheroes.com, but easiest to remember is pdsh.ca. From there, you can link to my Amazon, where all my books are for sale.
What's up, you guys? It's me, your boy, Ronico Taylor. It is currently 9:11. Bad timing. But yeah, it is currently that time of the night. I am just finishing up editing, about to hit export. But I wanted to let you know that this is only part 2. If you want to check out the first part, go back into the videos and find the previous one. I did a part 1 with him, talked all about the we basically talked about the whole details of his universe and all of the characters. This was just a slight ending point. If you want to hear more, he's probably got more stuff that he wants to talk about. I would not doubt it for a second. Thank you, Richard Jameson, for coming on. You were a really good guest. I really appreciate your talents, and I love comics, so please come back on if you have anything else. You know, behind me. But anyways, I appreciate you guys. Again, I release every Wednesday. Spotify as well for you audio listeners, or video. Either way works for me. But yeah, I am on Spotify. I've been posting funny shorts if you want the funny snippets on TikTok. All of my socials are down in the description. All of his socials that he shared out are down in the description. But please, don't be afraid. Oh, and hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.